This week's episode is brought to you by Alex Cherniak, Nick T, and Dave H. Thank you, Alex Cherniak, Nick T, and Dave H. It's with the generous support of listeners just like you that our dedicated team of 400 drunken rabbits smack and hit things with squishy hammers while chanting the noble eldritch lullaby to prevent the boiling chaos at the center of the cosmos from awakening and annihilating, well, everything in existence as if it were nothing but a dream of an idiot god. If you'd like to help us keep the universe from not suddenly existing, or just hear the second half of this episode, then please visit www.patreon.com/thewholerabbit, where your monthly donation of just $5 will not only earn you instant access to the extended version of this episode, oh no, you'll get instantaneous access to our entire library of extended, uncensored episodes that, once you log in, they're actually browsable from right within the Spotify app. Pretty cool. But that's not all. I'll send you a 5x5 high-quality vinyl sticker of our Big Bunny Baphomet cover art, and you'll get the secret keys to our Discord server, where we talk about pets, horror movies, and the occult. We're also talking about the Illuminati card trading game. We tried to warn you. We tried. If you're enjoying the free show, but rather save your $5 for a rechargeable plastic LED cufflink, then please consider giving us a like, subscribe, or a positive review on your platform of choice. Heck, if every listener got one of their friends to listen, well, it'd only be a few more iterations of that until we had our own country and eventually rule the world. So help us out. In this week's episode, we rise from our coffins, prepare the strawberry daiquiris, and don the cloak of the devil himself as we explore the finer points of becoming a real-life vampire. With Don Webb's occult classic, Energy Magic for the Vampire, as our guide, we learn about the various ways that a vampire hunts, feeds, and stores fresh quantities of energy on their journey down the vampyric path. Armed with decades of intense study and experience, Don Webb, the former high priest of the Temple of Set, lays out all the secrets, tips, and tricks to turn our normal environment into a hunting ground for pleasure, power, and inspiration. In the free side of the show, we detail the various places usable energy can be found and discuss how to defeat the vampire's lifelong opponent, the Social Parasite. In the extended version of the show, we discuss the nuanced nature of energy itself and the 9 secret ways to gather it. You know, vampirically, fishnets and eyeliner. Thank you, and enjoy the show. Why are vampires so naive?
Why?
Because they're born suckers.
I like that.
I stabbed a vampire, beat zombies to death, and killed the devil himself. My wife rushes through the room and shouts, "You're supposed to give them candies, Frank!" Good lord. Why can you never win a boxing match with Dracula?
Why?
Nobody can ever beat the Count. Jeez. What's the difference between Jesus and a vampire?
What?
Where you stick the wooden stake.
Uh,
How do you kill a French vampire?
How?
You have to stab him with a baguette? It sounds easy, but the process is painstaking.
Oh my god.
I don't get it.
That's bad. Pen is bread in French.
And Spanish, bon.
Pain? Oh, pain.
Sure.
Bond staking.
Oh, har.
Hello everybody, and welcome to The Whole Rabbit, where we don't just tell you how to banish the power suit wearing ex-husbando looking demon with a sprig of sage, a sigil of Mars, and a lavender spritzer. Nay, we push open the door of our ebony coffins, don the luxurious red cloak of Lucifer, and rise to feed the cats, work an 8-hour shift to catch a slice of pie with some werewolf friends of ours, because this week we're discussing the energy magic of the vampire, secret techniques of personal power and manifestation by Don Webb, the former high priest of the Temple of Set. I'm gonna see if he'll come on the show to talk to us someday, but for now, this is just a review of his book, so please buy it and follow along. There's also a Kindle version. I'm your host, Hack Rabbit, also known as Luke Madrid. I'm joined this week by the Corgi Devil Dog Damsel, Mari-sama.
Oh, woo!
The anti-cosmic rhythm rock shocker, Malachor 5.
Good evening, everyone.
And the hot, hell-baked honey bunny, Hecka Astra.
Hello.
How you doing inside that oven?
It was 110 degrees yesterday.
She's cooked. So, I was stoked for this episode because this topic is something our listeners can really sink their teeth into.
Dirt.
It's actually a newer book we're reviewing today, unlike usual. And as I mentioned earlier, I do recommend buying it if you love either animals or Satan.
I love both.
And if you like this episode so much that you don't want to pay for this book, don't do that, because Don Webb states that people who do that, they're going to feel some magical wrath from his side of the planet.
Yeah, he's put a
Wait.
curse in the book, so if you steal it, bad things will happen.
But isn't it free on Audible?
Audible has a free subscription for 3 months and then you got to pay, but you can listen to it on Audible for free within that 3-month period or buy it.
I listened to the whole thing on Audible. I loved it. Thought about it for a few months, and I thought after our Dion Fortune episode, this would be an appropriate follow-up.
I'm always down to talk about vampires. They're one of my favorite real-life characters to play as, but magically speaking, it's a really, really powerful ability to have to be vampiric.
And we'll get into it, but even if you're not into vampires, there's probably something for you in this episode as a practitioner, and it's fun. This is a fun path. It's serious, there's dangers, but the sparkle of fun runs throughout this entire current of magic. So let's get into it. Now, a few weeks ago, we discussed the occult classic, Dion Fortune's Psychic Self-Defense, perhaps the most successful occult book of all time, paving the way for countless imitations that have all but their own section now at mainstream bookstores. As you've probably noticed, many of them do little or nothing to expand on the words of Dion Fortune, either borrowing from the same sources or using Fortune's work as one itself. The result is a sort of flaccid, boring, and utterly generic magic for beginners type book, which both defangs the entire body of Fortune's teachings, fluffy as they were to begin with, and entirely fails to take a critical approach towards her ooga-boogification of other magic cultures with their unfamiliar gods, practices, and ideas about divinity. So fast forward to 2003. Amidst the burgeoning morass of colorful potpourri-flavored tripe lurked a small book, shiny, entirely black in color, with a blood and fire-red pentagram inversely emblazoned on its cover, titled boldly, The Satanic Bible by Anton LaVey. Naturally, I was mystified and purchased it immediately. Aside from perhaps a short stint with the Tao of Physics by Fridtjof Capra, this was my first occult text, and unlike the former, I read it cover to cover quite a few times. Well, at first, it was fun to learn that, oh wow, Satanists don't actually believe in Satan! It would take many more years for me to find where the root structure entwined with Thelema and what it had blossomed or evolved into as the years went by. Turns out, not every Satanist was on board with not believing in Satan, and Anton LaVey's brightest pupil, Michael Aquino, split off to found the Quixotic Temple of Set, which we actually have an episode devoted to if you'd like the whole story. Although cheesy, and even verbose at times, the Temple of Set under Michael Aquino became a potent force in its own right, and slowly became known to outsiders how they knew themselves, as a genuine spiritual successor of Anton LaVey's fading glory in the Church of Satan, something Michael Aquino would call the Infernal Mandate. So Michael Aquino, now holder of the Infernal Mandate, given the boon by Satan, or in this case Set himself, he went on to become a more controversial figure than even the Black Pope Anton LaVey had ever been, earning himself a staggering level of paranoia attached to his name, appearing on Oprah and Geraldo Rivera amidst the height of the Satanic Panic in the 1980s. Whether deserved or not, it's easy to see characters like Papa from Stranger Things are likely inspired by the conspiratorial mythology which grew up around Aquino, as he would go on to become a lieutenant colonel in the U.S. Army doing pioneering work in the field of psychological warfare, which we also have an episode about. Check it out. Even occultists, who oftentimes abhor conspiracy theory, also see Aquino in a controversial light for having, although not being a Nazi himself, having performed a spooky ritual inside Wewelsburg Castle dressed in full Nazi regalia, supposedly to rouse a current of energy capable of establishing the Order of the Trapezoid, a subsection of the Temple of Set with themes of chivalry knighthood. Understandably, that threw people off, and I think it still does. We'll kind of get into later why he did that. There's some hints in this book that kind of explain why he would do such a thing, assuming he's not a Nazi himself, which the more you learn about Aquino, doesn't really seem like a Nazi, so make up your own mind. We'll continue. So it would be here, in the Order of the Trapezoid, that a young, impressionable Don Webb would come under the tutelage of Grandmaster Stephen Flowers, and finally settled on an area of study, the magic of ancient Egypt. Then later, in 1996, after many years of study, practice, and rising through the ranks, Michael Aquino himself would confer upon Don Webb the rank of High Priest, effectively transferring leadership of the Temple of Set to him. About a year or so later, while looking through a membership roster, Don noticed that he was not only listed as a member of the Order of the Vampire, it was the first order he joined when he signed up for the Temple of Set, but he was now listed as a master. Surely this was a mistake. So he contacted Xena LaVey. This is Anton LaVey's daughter. She was also an initiating member of the Temple of Set at the time. And she assured him, in fact, that it was no accident, and that Don Webb was most assuredly a master of energy work, the defining characteristic of what it means to be a vampire, at least in the Temple of Set. It was then that Don had a realization.
I had never understood the true nature of the order, blinded by their glamour and contemptuous of the pop culture myth that guided their aesthetic. I had never paid much attention to their practice. In that flash, I saw that they were the masters of three things: working from the outside to the inside, dealing with wordless, silent states, and dealing with the body as a medium for truth, with a capital T.
The body is a medium for truth. Well, you call it the Temple of the Nine Gates if you want to sound spooky and gothic. That's what I do anyway.
Yeah, and this idea of dealing with wordless or silent states is something in the book he refers to that is something that Crowley was tapping into as well.
I think without torturing it too much, it's those silent, wordless states that fuel us as magicians. That's the material we learn to work with. It's almost our payoff. And I think it's admirable to cultivate those states. It's one reason I like this path.
Oh, absolutely. In those states, it's like you're going back to the primordial water to bring something into manifestation. You're the bridge, the medium between the two realms.
Yes, and this path assumes that there's a part of you that is eternal, whereas in the old satanic church, it really wasn't a thing that you had a soul. They really didn't deal with that kind of stuff, where in the Temple of Set, you absolutely do have a soul. You might even have multiple souls. And it's through those wordless states that you, as you mentioned, make a bridge between your eternal self and the world that you're going to influence with your vampiric will. We're getting a bit ahead of ourselves. So it's been over 2 decades since Don Webb has stepped down as the High Priest of the Temple of Set, but his influence on the order was significant, and he nudged it deep into the direction of animal magics, inspired by Egypt, and neo-shamanism. They got really into animals. Let's put it that way. Go ahead.
Yeah, and this neo-shamanism is like animistic, if you want to like look that up.
And because Set is all about the other, it is to them as well. So it's not uncommon for them to have an interest in native cultures from around the world, because they're considered other to our like Christian colonial society. So they're really into that stuff as well. So it's from these many decades of dedicated experience that Don Webb's Energy Magic of the Vampire was written, and it serves as a perfect modern complement to Dion Fortune's psychic self-defense, but with more bat wings, capes, and fake blood.
Nice aesthetic.
So this cuts straight to the heart of the matter. What do you mean vampire magic? Do I get to skulk around at night sucking blood from the feet of random damsels and then turn into bats before the FBI gets me? No.
Yes.
The answer is no. Sorry, Hecka.
Can it be a shirtless rock star vampire like Lestat in that one movie?
Yes. And because I'm not from the Temple of Set, I can just come out and say it's mostly an aesthetic thing. Although, putting it that simply would do a huge injustice to the finer, savory aspects of the Vampyric Path. After all, vampire symbolism and mythology serves as a wellspring of veiled secrets, encoded wisdom, and vital inspiration for the aspirant. Seeing themselves reflected in the mirror of mythology, a vampire finds both encouragement and clues of how to take their practice deeper. Don Webb explains this elegantly when he says,
Much of her myth is reflected in popular fiction and film, but at a crucial juncture, she will find something older, darker, and more real.
This is why it's valid to feel pulled to certain films, franchises, and characters, as this not only enriches the life of the enjoyer, it's a spiritual thread with cosmic meaning that's guiding you further into the mysteries. As you probably know, this phenomena is one of my favorite things in the universe to study, and it's similar to how hyperstition was explained by the CCRU, although here, for the Setian brand of vampire, this idea takes on a slightly more psychological flavor, and it swaps the hype for a deepening of personal experience. Even still, the bizarre phenomena of art imitating life, imitating art, imitating life is a cornerstone of how Don Webb describes magic as functioning, and it reflects the philosophy expressed throughout the Temple of Set's literature.
Magic is the art of producing a change in the subjective universe to create a change in the objective universe.
To oversimplify, change the inner world and the outer one will follow. To continue using hyperstition as a reference point, where hyperstition influences physical reality by by influencing the collective human psyche through art, guiding and shaping our evolution on a species-wide level. Setian magic works by deepening a feeling paired with critical analysis of the artistic material to derive a deeper understanding of the self and one's place in the universe, which guides and shapes evolution on a personal level. So it's a little different, but it works along the same energy continuum, and it still utilizes fiction in order to influence reality. It's just a little more inward for the vampire. So for instance, hyperstition may be nudging our society towards a world where laser swords and force powers are made to exist, but for the Setian vampire, the laser sword, which so brilliantly excites the psyche, can be seen as a symbol for the student's intellect and magical use of the word, allowing further viewings of the story that they already enjoy to give them a deeper sense of insight. As we've learned on this show, the best art, even when it's totally unchanged for decades, even centuries, has the capability to just keep giving and giving when enjoyed on this level. In this way, vampires enrich themselves with the life force of the universe, not human or animal blood. Sorry to disappoint anyone who was looking forward to that. The life force of the universe, it manifests in the form of art, the imagination, mythology, our self-reflective capacity, which itself is related to the quality of wakefulness.
And Don Webb is really adamant on making the point that this vampire magic is a left-hand path form of magic. He warns the reader that they should be mentally sane, sort of well off in the first place before they begin this stuff. And, you know, a little bit of a spoiler for the big mystery of this, but he does kind of say this in the beginning of the book, that the vampires found the place where it wants to be, right? And when we are talking about building this bridge between the manifested world and the unmanifested world to manipulate with things, this is why we have an upside down pentagram associated with this path as well. But the vampire sees himself as that other side already, as that dead state, not manifested yet, but eternal being. So the magical operation isn't to call to heaven and bring it down into reality. It's to pretty much be eternity and be a part of heaven. And you're not calling anymore for the power to come down. You're the one who's the power coming into manifestation.
The problem seems to be staying awake to that.
It's operating in these speechless states.
But life tries to pull us out of it, you know? Got birthday parties and gotta ride the bus and pay our bills and shit like that. It's really trying to pull you out of that and back into a state of deep slumber. And that's what the vampire has to look out for.
Yeah, and to just wrap up my idea here, like I said, the vampire has found where it exists. And this means in like the magical cosmos too, they are no longer like a lesser being. They're existing in the void, in Da'at, you know? Their magic is not like the rest of the tree of life, if you want to put it into a Kabbalistic sense. And it's kind of interesting to think about that, ain't it?
We'll actually get into the magic-y magic stuff in the next episode. Because apparently, vampire magic is distinct from pure magic. So the vampire has two powers to draw upon. We're going to mostly focus on the vampire and the vampire magic specifically in this first part. So now that we've said that, everything considered, we've arrived at a loftier idea of what a vampire is. And when stripped of its spooky aesthetic, as fun or as necessary as that will prove to be, we find a definition that should not offend your more traditional occultist. As Don Webb succinctly explains,
a vampire is a self-created energy being that is aware of the energy structures that maintain human life. The vampire seeks to obtain greater than normal energy, safeguard the energy she has, and use her energy to increase her pleasure, power, wisdom, and, most importantly, to change her relationship to time.
Sounds almost tame, doesn't it? Who wouldn't want that? Even more unexpected, maybe what Don Webb lists afterwards as the vampire's cardinal enemies.
The vampire's enemies are self-importance, conventionality, disease, pollution, fear, and dharma.
You know, things that necessarily ruin our experience, narrow our perception, and more succinctly, drain our energy. As a cross-disciplinary subgenius, I could certainly appreciate dharma as a drain of energy and why it deserves to be seen as a mortal foe. Praise Bob, the Slackmaster!
Give me back my slack.
Though, the fact that self-importance is a negative aspect to a vampire is interesting to me because you see in media, they're portrayed as full of themselves, perhaps, or egotists or sociopathic. And then the colloquial term, an energy vampire, which is somebody that is so self-important and egotistic that they suck energy from other people. We're talking about the real shit here. Like, this is not a cartoon.
I think Don Webb is also making a case here that a vampire can be a good person too. Just because you're a dead, wrathful demon walking on Earth doesn't mean that you're here to everybody's life up. This kind of vampire makes life better for everybody just naturally. Kind of weird, but it's like a good vampire.
We'll get into why we want to do this, but let's think about pop culture vampires for a minute. I grew up in the 90s, so I've seen enough of these movies to know that in the world of vampires, you've got like the ghoulish vampires who can't really control themselves, and they just like run around and like are crazy and violent, and in a vampire society, they may be more akin to the gangsters that are
a bunch of bad boys.
And then you've got like the other vampires who are like, you know, running the city. They're wearing the power suits and they're driving in the limos and they're drinking the fancy blood, you know? There's like different levels of vampire. And so
Like Tom Cruise.
yes, exactly.
That's why he was Lestat, by the way.
Was he Lestat?
Yeah.
You serious?
Yeah, he was the sire.
I'm just thinking about what they do in the shadows, because that's like, I don't really like vampire media, but I like that.
I thought you brought up Tom Cruise because you meant he was a real vampire.
I mean, he is, though.
He is.
It's hyperstition going on here. He is a vampire. See, and then he plays a vampire to hide the fact that he is, in fact, a vampire.
Those were not just ordinary people there.
In real life, not in the movies. It's great.
But he's one of those vampires where, like, if he gets pulled over for drunk driving, the next day on Twitter, they'll be blaming the cop for it. Like, oh, how dare you pull over Tom Cruise for drinking and driving? You don't even know his best movies. Rock your body. How dare you arrest him? Like that kind of vampire, right? My point is, there's stridations of vampires, and we want to learn, or at least open the doors to be the most rarefied, dignified, and best vampire we can be, which means having a bit of dignity, self-control, you know, and exerting some class in this whole sucking of energy constantly, you know? Which is really what this is about. How do we become the classiest, most powerful vampire we can be?
Dark crystal.
So in short, being a vampire is really all about managing energy. So what is energy? How do we go about defining it?
From the book, energy, as a grade school science tells us, is the ability to do work. Any energy that the vampire can absorb from biological, emotional, mental, or magical sources can be stored, transferred, or transformed to increase the vampire's power, pleasure, longevity, or evolution. All humans can absorb, use, store, or transform energy. All humans can play basketball. Vampires play in the NBA. Some humans have natural gifts in the biological, emotional, mental, or magical realms. Vampires acquire skill at energy manipulation in all four realms.
Dawn explains this is achieved through
using a variety of techniques from acting, tantra, neurobiology, magic, and hunting.
a hunter must hunt.
A hunter must hunt.
Likewise, with enough practice, skill, and determination, Dawn declares triumphantly.
The vampire is the mode of freedom in a world where everyone is in chains.
I want to make a comment about that, though. I mean, that's an interesting line to just leave unanswered, right?
Well, I hate to throw vampires under the bus, but if we're already looking at the world from a Neoplatonic perspective, we already see the world as asleep. We already know the other people at the back of the cave with the chains attached to their neck. They're constantly pointing us towards the animal show on the back of the cave, draining our energy.
Can either believe it or they cannot believe it.
I mean, we're already trying to escape the cave like a bat out of hell, you know? So, to some extent, I think this wisdom is universal. There's just some people really like bat wings.
And the darkness.
Yes, I like the darkness. I like when it's dark with red lights on. That's my favorite. Because I'm a vampire.
I think what Don Webb is symbolically getting at here, too, with the allegory of the cave that you're mentioning, is that, like, you know, Daywalker, you know, Blade, Wesley Snipes.
Yeah.
You know, a vampire who's able to walk in the day, I mean, that's a lot more deadlier than a vampire who's asleep at night, because then you could just, like, kill them while they're asleep. Anyway, but it's a vampire able to, that's awake. It's like people who are vampires who have to stay in the dark. It's like they're vampires who are asleep. And it's like, therefore, you're not really a vampire. Like, we all are vampires. You just don't know it. You're not awake yet. And symbolically speaking, when the vampire gets out of the cave and stays in the sunlight, he's choosing not to go back in the cave and tell everybody that the animals on the wall are just shadows. He's like, you know what? I'm going to save this knowledge for myself, and I'm going to see how it is out here and have a good time out in the sun. Even though it burns a little bit, he's getting past it.
Yeah, I'm gonna go frolic with the animals, because I'm a vampire and I love animals.
I'm gonna go hunt. I'm gonna go hunt him. I'm not gonna just look at him on a wall.
Yep.
I get to do the thing. Now I could be one of the fuckers moving the animals on the wall.
I don't give two fucks.
because it's all a joke. Who are those guys? You know, this vampire is now energized or awoken, I guess. And, you know, asking the question, what is energy? It's kind of funny because, you know, you ask any normal person and you get different answers. But as mysterious as this word is, everybody knows what it means. You know, people will tell you it's electricity. It's similar to magical fire on the pentagram. It's how tired or awake you are in any given moment as a human. Etymologically speaking, it comes from the word energia in its Greek, and it was none other than Aristotle who made the word, and it means in or within work. So I think it's kind of funny when you hear people say like, oh yeah, you know, I like doing energy work, and it's like, you like doing work? It's just, I get it, but people like me are just like, what?
It's like when people say chai tea. Chai means tea. You're saying tea.
Or ATM machine.
Or money, cash money, and sneaker shoes.
Cash money.
So it's the subjective sense of inner power that allows you to accomplish something. Like when you can't get out of bed because you're so depressed, you have no energy. It's a subjective thing. We want to have more energy. That's the goal, and to store it. But as I mentioned, life is constantly trying to lull us to sleep, to put us back in the matrix, so to speak. And this freedom-limiting aspect of the universe is something that the vampire must contend with constantly. This inhibitor to freedom is keenly felt in the form of tribal customs and systems of social hierarchy or control. While those certainly are a drag, Webb does explain that they're necessary for survival here on Earth, and without them, well, we'd be none too comfortable. As such, we give energy in the form of money to the state to keep our roads and schools open, inspect our beef, and keep our fleet of robots shooting missiles at terrorist weddings and birthday parties. Moreover, we're expected to internalize a number of rules, moral codes, and taboos of our host culture, such that we automatically find ourselves answering fine whenever somebody asks us how we're doing.
Beyond the social aspect of control, where internalized rules produced automatic behavior, there is a perceptual aspect. We model the cosmos based on internalized rules. For example, you're taking a shower and you can half hear a song on your neighbor's radio. It's a song you like, so you sing along. Then you turn off the shower. It's a completely different song. You heard what your mind predicted you would hear.
I often like to speculate that the idea of the Big Bang only came about because it's what we expected to find based on thousands of years of Christian mythology that all our institutions of thought are rooted in. This energetic inhibitory mechanism is conceptualized by Webb as the social parasite, and it functions as an addendum to the body, working to protect it. As Don puts it,
the social parasite is an accumulation of social and language training that acts as though it were a living part of your personality. Just a side note, of the Big Bang is a great example. The only reason that we believe in mass that is the beginning of the universe as we know it is because we're taught by our culture to understand a beginning and an end of things. We're not prior culture to understand that things can be cyclical or can evolve and change on a larger scale than where it begins and where it ends.
And so those ideas become hard-baked into us, and they allow us to basically think without thinking. This is akin to sleeping. We want to avoid that level of consciousness and be fully aware. Now, this phrase is not used, but the social parasite is described as something akin to like autopilot, and it functions while the vampiric self is dormant and sleeping. Metaphorically speaking, this makes the social self, the one controlled by the parasite, an apt corollary to the mythological ghoul or human servant, which guards the vampire during sleep and attends to his worldly affairs in his stead. Isn't that fun? Like Keanu Reeves or Renfield. So like your vampiric self is like sexy Gary Oldman with the long hair, he can turn into wolves and hump vulnerable white women. And then your outer self is like Tom Waits, talking to rats, playing on the banjo. So I find this to be a useful metaphor when trying to understand some of the energetic dynamics Don Webb is discussing in the book. For instance, this emergence of the vampiric self is referred to repeatedly as awakening. And it's even a wink and a nod given to the Buddha, which also means one who is awakened. In short, it sounds like the vampiric self is the part of you that is present and empowered. The one who's taking a back seat when you're, just going through the motions. At one point, Don Webb refers to the Hindu concept of Maya as the parasite police, pointing to fear, lust, and duty as the primary methods the parasite uses to keep us asleep. To give it a truly left-handed spin, Don elbows Buddha in the ribs for relenting to an overlooked fourth temptation, nirvana itself, a word which means to blow out or extinguish, specifically in regards to the self. While this might sound outlandish, maybe even arrogant at first, this should be expected of left-hand path philosophies, which reject annihilation of the self. And it's also not entirely unprecedented in the religion of Thelema, which departs from Buddhism the most strongly on this particular point of metaphysical nuance. Crowley even rejected the Book of the Law at first, for this exact reason. To be specific, this point is emphasized in chapter 2, verse 9 of the Book of the Law, which reads, "Remember all ye that existence is pure joy, that all the sorrows are but as shadows. They pass and are done, but there is that which remains." In effect, this is the evangelical piece of good news about the new aeon, that the base level of reality is not nothingness, but pure joy. And this pure joy is at the root of all things, including the self. Thus, in Thelema, and here in Don Webb's Vampyre Magick, the idea is to awaken this dimension of reality so thoroughly that we may continue our empowered, vital spiritual condition beyond the gates of death into eternity. You know, like Force Ghosts in Star Wars. On this notion, Webb jests.
Why play the immortal game if there is no meaningful leveling up?
So, like we were talking about left-hand path earlier, this is that. And doesn't that sound like more fun than just snuffing yourself out?
Yeah, for sure.
But also, to be fair, I feel like the further you go towards the gates of wisdom, the more the left-hand and the right-hand path begin to overlap. There's even, we'll talk about him shortly, Ankh Nakansu referred to himself as the self-slain one. So even he kind of used, like, snuff myself out terms, you know?
The way I see it is from what direction do you want to approach that idea that both of these paths eventually do come to the same point?
They all
like,
bottleneck together. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, well, I'd like to have some fun instead of like having my fucking life feel like it's nothing's going on the whole time, but I believe I'm doing mental and spiritual work. Like, I'd rather live it too.
No, Mal, I get it. You're like, okay, we're gonna enter Chapel Perilous. Do we want to enter through the gift shop or do we want to enter through the bar? You know?
I mean, always the bar.
Always the bar.
I mean, I like gift shops though.
Yeah, but you gotta have money.
Well, you can look at stuff.
I could seduce somebody to get me a drink in the bar.
Fair enough.
It's true. Gift shop, you just take it.
Oh, that's not, no.
I don't know. I get a lot of enjoyment out of window shopping, so.
That's what Alejandro Jodorowsky told me to do. He said steal from the holy gift shop.
There's so many ways this discussion can go. We should move on. But that's essentially what he's talking about here. This is the left-hand path. No doubt about it. Don't try to say that this vampire magic is right-hand path and that it works together, because it doesn't. Until you're at that crossroad point where they do meet, actually.
Yeah, at the higher levels. Like, once you get to the fucking end game, that's when stuff starts to cross paths.
New game plus. You beat both paths.
I don't know if I have a section for it in this episode. We might get to it in the next one. That so much of this is built on the back of the quote-unquote new aeon, which Crowley expressed through the Book of the Law, but like Carl Jung expressed it too. And it seems like a bunch of minds all got on the same train of thought and they experienced and birthed the new aeon. It feels a lot like this wisdom piggybacks off of that, and it makes good use of its truths to get a lot of mileage behind this vampire stuff, which is why I'm not afraid to talk about it at all. It's because some of this is just Thelema made comprehensible. It diverges in some parts, but there's a lot of fresh fire from the heavens, as I guess Thel might say.
Well, yeah, and I get what you're saying, because ushering in the new aeon, it's the opening up and the expressing of the divine feminine in a more positive manner. So the fact that this book also refers to the vampire as a she by default, that it's a very feminine use of power on the left-hand path, is, I think that's indicative of the new aeon, of empowering the female way of doing things, but not in a destructive manner, right? In more of a wholesome way that can encompass more than just the left-hand path, because you're going to have to jump off of that train of thought in order to, reach your highest pinnacle point. I feel like the fact that Carl Jung and Crowley and everybody was doing this, was on the bandwagon for the last 100 years. I think the fact that they were putting energy and attention into it is actually like manifested it out more meaningfully.
I totally vibe with what you're saying about empowering the left-hand path, or, the feminine aspect of our reality in a peaceful way. But just the nature of that statement is a little bit, to invoke the liminal idea, is counteractive to what it seems like our world is preference to. There is going to be clapback, you know, and it seems like it's gotten to the point where it's going to be, you know, quote unquote disruptive or violent, but you know, maybe not.
But even then, like, even you guys were rattling off all these movies and books and stuff about vampires. I like old vampires. I'm talking classical, like Nosferatu, and like who Dracula is based on, which is like a maniac man killer that put heads on pikes and stuff and murdered indiscriminately. So there's a definite, like, you can even see the shift in the whole concept of vampires from the untamed, wild masculine into this concept of the divine feminine. So that's what I'm saying, is like the fact that people are thinking about vampiric magic in this way, I think is actually changing the landscape as we see it. Because if you realize, before, vampires were just monsters. They were animalistic monsters that killed indiscriminately. And I think Anne Rice had a lot to do with that too. Like, there's a lot of things in our culture, and it's not just philosophical or religious writings. It also has to do with the zeitgeist, like our entire culture and the stories we tell and the fictions that we make around this idea.
Yes.
Yeah.
All that stuff is super important to this path. None of that is forsaken. It's all stuff you use. But I think you're correct that it is very new aeonic. It is very thelemic. It is very new age to look back at this demon, bring it into the light, and redeem it as something that can be put to the service of, quote, good, or the self, or a higher purpose, or whatever.
Or balancing stuff. Yeah.
Oh man, it sounds like you're Solomon building a temple with demon power.
Mm-hmm.
And
Oh,
you know,
we'll get there.
I can't help but think, you know, of the phrase sympathy for the devil. You know, it's this left-hand path. It's you're going to hear it out, you know, the devil's advocate, so to speak, and you're going to find some interesting things.
But when the devil is more feminine, receptive, and, you know, a little rounder around the edges, so to speak, that might be an easier task.
Well, let's just spoil the fun for everybody. I mean, Carl Jung, in our male-centric world, is like, well, if you're the soul is feminine if you're a guy. Or there is this idea that the soul is feminine, and it exists in Thelema as well, that Babylon is our soul, and she's drunk on the blood of the saints, right? And so it's like, it's a little vampiric, like, written into there. It's a little Gnostic, like Sophia is stuck in this dead world, and it's like hers to consume, to bring us back to the light, to make us eternal beings again. It's kind of all in the soup. And so it's clever to just really knuckle down on it with the fake blood and the capes.
That's why I like in the book, every time he's referring to the vampire we're reading about, he's always referring to it as a female.
Because it's the soul. The soul is the eternal part of us, and that's the part that we want to put in the world. We want to have a flag. It's got that eternal part, and it's firmly sunk into the earth. That's what we want to do as a vampire. We want to bring the eternal to the eternal. See? I can use
Not
words.
vice versa. Yeah.
And you
Yes,
know,
not vice versa. Yes, the pentagram's upside down.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting you bring up Babylon because she's holding like a grail, like a giant cup.
It's full of blood.
Lady parts.
And there's a lot to say about that, but it's like, you know, also associated with the chariot, which is this idea of work and the power to go, this very energetic force, but speaking purely in like tarot and like divine speech, right? And so that grail she's drinking out of is a little bit of this power source for this dead thing to keep on going.
Oh, don't get me started, because the magical word of the Temple of Set was Kefir, Kefiru, Kefri, right? Which has a very strong overlap with the chariot in the tarot, because it's that beast represents the tarot and the motion through the underworld and the becoming of the self, the big birth from the underworld. So here it is again. And that's why if you get into this Temple of Set stuff, you'll find this, albeit it's a little cringy, but it's cute, Michael Kino being like, yeah, Aleister Crowley brought in the Aeon of Horus, but now it's the Aeon of Set because I said so, because I'm the man. It's like, okay, cool, I get it, but whatever. Like, it's all the same, whatever.
It's the Aeon of the Rabbit now.
Yeah, it's the Aeon of the Rabbit now, because I said so, because I have the Lepian mandate. See? Everyone's trying to think they Ankfna Kansu. You can't out Ankfna Kansu. Anyway, let's continue. So, before we get to the finer points of how energy works, Don lists some common sources of where to find the energy. He says, the first main source of energy is attention, with our own being the strongest. Through our attention, we are capable of working miracles through magic, or the more mundane miracle of just getting off your ass and accomplishing something with hard work.
Webb says, quote, "The next richest attention is that of a healthy human love, partner to partner, being the strongest, then parent for child. Then are there blood relationships. Then comes magical attention we gain from our teachers, those gifted humans who truly want us to succeed. Then comes friendship for magical peers, then normal human friendship when healthy, then attention from animal companions. Then comes our energy that comes from students, then energy given from sleeping humans, and last, energy taken from sleeping humans. The last four sources are meager and may lead to grave distortions of self."
Some examples of how the last four can go wrong are then given. You know those people who hoard animals but they can't take care of them? That's considered a bad thing, and a sign that somebody has become unable to gather energy themselves in a healthy way, and they now must vampirize their many animals. In the Temple of Set, you gotta be good with animals. And having a healthy relationship with an animal is a huge boon if you're a vampire. So you do want to have an animal friend. You just don't want to become one of those people who, that's like, you know, you're just living in cats.
My fur babies.
Yay!
No, it's called a familiar, and it's like that show I mentioned, the What We Do in the Dark. It's a comedy show, but they have human familiars, which is kind of an interesting concept because to them, humans are pretty much animals if you look at it that way.
We're pets for the aliens. Let's be real. Then energy acquired by students. It's explained as the source of power for mega churches and the occult industry in general. And it's not really stated explicitly, but it is hinted at that this mechanism is abused in the creation of a cult where the master feeds on the energy generated by the student.
From the book, as humans step away from the parasite, there is a boost in their energy that they are not able to store. They radiate out new life. If this is met by an initiatory current, this energy is transformed and redirected upon them. However, if it is merely absorbed by the teacher, it leads to delusions of self-importance. The follower feels that she is chosen, and the teacher feels that he is worthy.
So like with cult leaders, how they constantly have to escalate the story and isolate their followers, it's to make the social parasite give up this energy. And then the followers can't use it, and it goes to the leader, and they become more and more and more powerful until they can tell them to do whatever they want. I would imagine it's also one reason why it's hard to leave a cult, because your social parasite is now keeping you in that orbit. But anyway, it then says, energy given by sleeping humans includes adoration or fear, and this can extend to thousands of screaming rock fans who just by their psychic energy can keep the band alive despite the band, otherwise they would have been long dead from their lifestyle habits, etc.
Yo, but even so, like when there's a big throng of fans and stuff, normally if you have people that admire you, you'd want to go talk to them and stuff and interact with them. It can get to a point where they're like a massive throng of wild animals that you have to like protect yourself from. So I could see that this adoration can become a negative energy.
Yes, it can be dangerous, and it's being given to you by sleeping people. So it's not fully conscious how it's working.
It's fervorous and it's like a fever dream energy.
You're still like seducing them to give it to you. The next category is energy taken from sleeping humans. And this is considered the most controversial aspect of vampirism. There's 4 ways to accomplish it. The first mentioned is shock art. It usually involves the desecration of an icon. This of course can be done for noble or ignoble purposes. So take for instance Laibach or Rammstein that desecrate fascist icons. Releases a ton of energy, even if it gets some people pissed at them because they don't understand what's going on.
I guess this is why your mom jokes work.
Yep.
It reminds me of that art piece too, where it's a crucifix with Jesus on it and it's covered in piss or something. They put it on display in a museum and there was public outrage. And also the Baphomet statue that they put like Michigan somewhere. Yep. It's a shock thing to do to pull up to get their psychic energy.
I think it's called Piss Christ.
Piss Christ.
Yeah.
It's by this artist, and that artist did a music video for a band called Godflesh, and I really, really like that band because it's industrial metal and it's just shocking. It's performance art almost.
I can agree with this though, because there's a time and place to desecrate these kind of things if there is a reason behind it. Now, if you're just doing it to be an edgelord and you're doing it over and over and over again, it loses its potency, in my opinion.
It's like Nine Inch Nails, like I think a lot of industrial goth music plays on this shock factor. This first,
yeah, turning the cross upside down and shit.
Yeah, just like let's see who gets pissed off. Yeah, fuck you. I'm energized by your hate. It's kind of,
or even drawing Muhammad or something. You could desecrate anything.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well-
I can see how this is a way to get energy out of people, and then you catch it just because it's being put out.
Well, if we're getting really occult, you can draw it out of yourself in the same way. We've heard stories that the way to command jinn or to do black magic in the Near East is to like put the Quran on your feet like sandals and walk around on a dirty bathroom floor. Like, whoa, like, because that's so fucking taboo. It is going to release a ton of psychic energy just by doing it. And then you can use that psychic energy to manifest the jinn or feed the jinn or whatever, you know?
Interesting, because that's what you're saying when we were talking earlier about there's a way when you're conforming to everyday life and all that. This is like the most potent way to break out of it too, is to look at the taboos of your host culture and to completely shit and piss on them, basically.
And Webb says to absolutely have as much joy in this as possible. Laughter is like the mastery over this art of energy gathering, if you're able to do that. Not feel bad about feeding. Like, getting over that quickly is part of like a vampiric personal side of the journey. But once you learn how to do it and you're like, you know what, this is the 1,000th time that I fed off of somebody else's energy in a positive way, you lose this shock factor within yourself. So maybe you start to go further and further with your feeding habits, and you need the second method, you know?
Yeah, just go to a museum. Because, I mean, shocking people to get your energy, it becomes limiting. And he says that, like, this is the problem with hate groups, is like it becomes a fix for them. They have to constantly desecrate, and it starts to become another aspect of your sleep. So you want to be skillful about it.
Yeah, use it proactively and don't rely on it. That's what I was saying, is it gets really old really fast when people are edgy all the time. You know what I mean? Like when I read comics and there's gore in it, I don't read comics that have a shit ton of gore in it. I read the ones that use it for specific scenes to drill in the idea of what's going on, right? So the shock value, it's a tool, but if you overuse it, it's a cheap move. You're not getting as much energy out of it if you keep overusing it, smashing in the A button.
Now, the second method of taking energy from sleeping people is psychic vampirism. And we've talked about this plenty on the show. It basically operates on destroying the joy of others, which, as bad as it is, it only releases a small amount of usable energy. It's not very efficient, and it makes everyone miserable. Don Webb emphatically states that a vampire must eliminate these people from their life, because it'll just mess everything up.
So taking the fun out of somebody's life, their joy, to feed on that energy.
He says that's encouraged by the social parasite as well. Like, the social parasite wants you to do it. And so it's a very popular thing to do, is to get energy by stopping other people's good time for some reason.
This is the antithesis to my theory that nature isn't constantly in competition. It's cooperation that is the hidden nature of all things. It's all working together. It's not fighting against each other.
I agree. I guess that's what makes us hippies.
We aren't evil beings, you know. We're actually positive and working together. Whatever, right? This is left-hand
God, do I smell potpourri?
So I need to feed some more. What are some other ways?
So to feed off the sleeping people, we're still in that category, okay? The lowest one. You can create a metaphysical device, like a thing that absorbs excess human energy and then dump it where you know a political rally is going to be or a rock concert. You know, it's like an orgone generator, but for goth kids instead of hippies. I made those when I was a hippie. Those orgone generators, clean things. George Costanza with the pyramid on his head. Anyway, let's continue. There's vampire editions of this, apparently. Blown away. Anyway. So the fourth form, well, that's a bit of a secret that Don promises to teach us later if we only promise to use it under the most dire of circumstances.
It's pretty interesting, that I will say, because I read the whole book and I was only supposed to read a couple chapters.
We can only talk about so much at once, and I didn't want to load you down, so you'll be ready for next week. But anyway, it is about basically feeding on someone until they more or less are dead.
I can no longer sit back and allow the international communist conspiracy to sap and impurify all of our precious bodily fluids.
But we'll get there. We'll talk about that when it comes up. Now, in Chapter 3, Don begins to explain that, unlike the Matrix, the energy is not exactly the same as electromagnetism that we use to power a light bulb. This measurable capacity in humans for real electromagnetism, it tops out around 80 watts, which is barely enough power to make a light bulb glow. And while that might seem unimpressive, the amount of measurable electromagnetic energy needed to make a computer function at the level your brain does would require a vastly great amount of energy, more than 80 watts. The Frontier supercomputer at the Department of Energy's Oak Ridge National Laboratory is thought to compute a similar amount of processes per second as the human brain, and it uses 23 million watts. It requires an entire installation in terms of physical space just to make it work. Meanwhile, an adult human brain weighs all of 3 pounds, and it uses maybe 20 watts. Naturally, the type of energy the vampire deals with is not the conventional one our electrician is paid to deal with, but something a bit more subtle, tenuous, psychic. When we consider the relative balance between the power and subtlety of the human body, it makes sense that we would not need to deal with giant arcs of electricity to cause lightning storms in our own lives.
I think that's pretty insane to point out because it's basically making an equation where the energy in our brain, in our bodies, is not equal to the energy in our perceivable world.
No, it's way more subtle.
So there's something probably magical going on there, or it's so tuned and perfect. It's just an interesting way to put it. Like if you're talking about it materialistically, like watts and stuff, it's like, well, we're just perfect. We're engineered to harness energy so subtle and output so much. It's wild.
Yeah, but the fact that the computer needs that much more energy specifically, it just shows how inefficient it is and how efficient the biological form is. So for me, it's a loss of efficiency. Like you could do the same calculation, but you use less electromagnetic power, but that has to be somewhere. And like Luke was saying, that perhaps these energies are more subtle or psychic. There is a whole nother spectrum of energies and information that we haven't really barely tapped into. Like there's a spiritual energy that we're not really aware of. And I think likening this to electromagnetic energy as a one-to-one, I think is a misnomer. I think that there's a lot more going on behind the scenes that we're aware of. And computers can match the human ability for sure, but it's not going to be as efficient as we need it to be. I don't know. It's interesting to read this because it just kind of mirrors some aspects I've been looking into, like on the scientific level versus this psychic spiritual energy that we've yet to name or even identify or catalog in our own scientific research.
But we've demonized it.
Yeah, I mean, they say, oh, it's not a real thing, but it does have an effect on reality. Even though it's not part of the system of reality, it's outside of it, but it encompasses reality as a whole. So you can't weed it out of the equation, so to speak.
I mean, biological life is scalpels and our science is sledgehammers. So we don't need to mix terms. Like if the fabric of our lives is subtle, it makes sense to deal with subtleties here in the Vampyric Path. Which brings us to the 5 distinct properties of energy, which can be symbolized by the pentagram. But if you'd like to hear that section of the show, along with how to gather and store energy, alongside using the 5 levels of vampiric myth to improve your life for power, pleasure, and profit, then please visit www.patreon.com/thewholerabbit, where your monthly donation of just $5 will not only get you the extended version of this episode, but every single one of our episodes going back over 5 years. I'll send you a 5x5 high quality vinyl sticker for our Big Bunny Baphomet cover art, and you'll get the secret keys to our Discord server where you could talk to us about the one time you defeated an energy vampire with
your familiars,
with garlic and a slingshot,
perhaps a silver bullet,
perhaps
in a gimp suit.
Thank you, everybody. Eat carrots and shoot lasers.
Pew pew.
Pew pew pew.